Okay, it is 6 o'clock. We will call the meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Director Fourcroy.
I'm here.
Director Millage.
Here.
Director Ohilsky.
Present.
Vice President Womack.
Present.
President Cesenia.
I'm here. Okay, we have everyone on board. So tonight we'll go to item 2 on the agenda, public hearings and presentations. And first of all, we will hear from Lexi Bell, the Executive Director of the National Estuary Program, and she will be presenting the State of the Bay annual presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my... Oh, I can't share my screen yet. So maybe, Laura, you can let me do that, or you can share the presentation that I sent to you.
You're no fun, Lexi.
I'd like to share. Oh, now I can.
That's no better in person.
Definitely.
I wish I was there in person and could see you all.
We're ready for the new normal, whatever that's going to be.
Right?
Lexi and I prefer that our estuary program meetings were in person too, as you know. So.
Yeah.
How is that? Can you see my first slide about State of the Bay 2020 with our logo on it?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Great. So usually we do come in the spring, and I was very disappointed to miss being able to come in the spring and see you all in person. But I think we were scheduled to come right about when everything shut down. So I'm glad that we'll at least get to talk about State of the Bay tonight. For those of you that aren't familiar with me, I'm the Executive Director of the Morro Bay National Estuary Program. And here's a little bit about our program and who we are. We're a nonprofit, not a regulatory agency, and we're part of a network of 28 national estuary programs designated by the EPA across the country. We focus on collaboration and bringing together citizens, government agencies, nonprofits, and landowners to protect and restore Morro Bay, the primary focus on water quality. This is the watershed that we work in. So a watershed is an area of land that all drains to the same body of water. And those little red dots on this map indicate the area of land that drains into Morro Bay. So the blue lines are all the creeks that drain into the bay. The main one in Churro Valley, the Churro Creek here, and then Los Osos Creek here. And the estuary itself is about 2,300 acres, and the watershed is 48,000 acres. So there are 3 main areas that we work in. One is restoration and conservation, the focus of which is to reduce pollution, protect natural areas, and restore natural areas that have been degraded. The second area is education and outreach. That's part of why I'm here tonight, is to talk about how to keep the bay clean and healthy. Another priority of ours is to share data and scientific information about the bay and to educate students and visitors about what a watershed is, what the bay is, what lives there, and how we can all be good stewards of it. And then we also do monitoring and research to assess how the bay and the watershed change over time. And here is a picture of some intrepid volunteers out in the field helping us collect data. Another sad thing about the pandemic is our inability right now to use volunteers for this water quality work. So I'm here tonight because every 3 years we release a report called the State of the Bay, where we share all the updated scientific data about the bay, answering 10 questions about the state of the bay. So you can go online to our website, which is the initials for our program, mbnep.org/state of the bay, or you can navigate to it with the website. And you can download the report. We also, this is the first year that we have an interactive version on that website where you can click on each question. There's videos, there's extra content for each question. So we're really excited about that format this time. And I think it was also included as a PDF in the package for those of you that downloaded that from the website. So tonight I'm just going to focus on a couple of the questions to keep my presentation short and sweet, but there's a lot more information online in the report. So one of the major questions we get about the bay is it safe to swim in the bay? So this is one of the questions we always answer in the report. Safe swimming is usually focused on pathogens that cause illness, whether bacteria and viruses are at an elevated level in the bay. And there's a test for that. It's called an indicator bacteria. That means that it's a kind of bacteria that indicates these bad pathogens might be in the water. And the indicator in saltwater is Enterococcus. And so the data that we present in the report is data from 2005 to 2018. These are the kinds of sources that can bring bacteria into the bay. Everything from natural wildlife and livestock, domestic pets, stormwater runoff, sewage treatment plants, and septic systems, depending on how they're maintained and set up. And here's our map from the report for 2020. You'll see these green dots along the bay. Here, these are all our testing sites, and this is showing that over the course of those dates from 2005 to 2018, most of the time the bacteria was in the very good or good standard, meaning it's safe to swim. This doesn't reflect changes, for example, when it rains, there'll be a lot of stormwater running off into the bay at one time. And so the bacteria levels will elevate during those times. We always remind people it's good practice to stay out of the water 72 hours after it rains. Those are times when it's most likely to have elevated bacteria that could be unsafe for swimming. But on average, over the course of the year, the bay is generally clean enough for swimming. So that's really good news. One thing that we do to help keep the bay clean and nice for swimming is we run the Mutts for the Bay program around the watershed. So we have 34 dispensers that we manage right now, and those are funded by private donors, businesses, organizations, and both the city and county of San Luis Obispo has provided some funds in the past. We give out quite a lot of bags, 360,000 in 2019, and that's preventing many pounds of waste from washing off into the bay. One interesting thing about the Mutts program that I think people are usually not aware of is that pet waste, particularly dog waste, if it sits in one place, it can actually hold bacteria for up to a year. So it's really important to pick up every time because it can be a consistent source of bacteria as water keeps running off of it. So that's a really big part of the community's effort to help keep bacteria out of the bay, something that everyone can do. So the next question I wanted to give a little bit of background on is eelgrass. Many people who kayak or paddleboard or are out on the water might recognize this plant growing in the mud flats or deeper in the water. It's called eelgrass. It's a really important habitat. It is an area that small juvenile fish and other animals can hide from predators. It provides a food source for many animals. It also helps slow the water down so that sediment can fall out of the water. The water can stay more clear. And it also helps process nutrients out of the water, and it makes oxygen for marine life to be able to have enough oxygen in the water. So it's really important. We've had a huge loss since 2007, 96% from 2007 to 2017. Here's our terrible maps that always make everyone sad about how the bay looked in 2007. All that green is eelgrass that we had mapped with an aerial survey. And then you see in 2010, and then 2013, and then 2017, you start to see a couple of little green spots coming back in 2017. And you see that quite a lot of the eelgrass up by the Rock and Coleman Beach is in really good shape. So now, of course, it's 2020. We did do another flight, and we're working on a new map. Hopefully we'll have that out before the end of the year. We do think we've had an increase. We might be somewhere between 30 and 40 acres of eelgrass, which is a nice increase, still way low compared to our high of 340, but a really good start. And I know there's been a lot of people noticing more eelgrass when they're out in the bay and taking pictures and being excited about it, which is great. So one reason we've had some come back is our eelgrass restoration effort. So this picture here on the left shows some of our volunteers and staff harvesting eelgrass, which you can only do with a permit. So we had some permits from California Department of Fish and Wildlife that allowed us to harvest the eelgrass from these really healthy beds up by Coleman Beach here. And then we transplant them in areas that we think have the right conditions for eelgrass to grow, but the eelgrass is currently not there. And we use these garden stakes to make sure they stay down while they're getting established. And you can see here is an excited technician from our team showing off these plots that we planted in 2019. And this is just 1 year later in 2020. Earlier this spring, you can see how much bigger they've gotten because the square is the same square as over here. So this method has been really successful, and we continue to get funding from grants to do this work so we can help proactively aid the eelgrass in coming back in the bay and helping improve the water quality of the bay. So another aspect of our work is protecting and restoring habitat. And this helps improve water quality because the more natural habitat and vegetation is present on the land, the more we can keep stormwater sinking down into the earth instead of running off with pollutants. And we can also provide habitat for plants and animals and the environment around us. So some examples of this include some floodplain restoration work we did and some creek restoration work we've done over the past few years. So people usually ask us what they can do to help keep the bay clean and healthy. We have a very engaged community here, as you all know, people who care about the bay. And as I mentioned, picking up after your pet goes a long way. Watching what goes down the storm drain. The storm drains in the street go directly to the bay without any treatment. So you do not want to be putting down oil or rinse water from a paint job, anything like that. It would go right into the bay. And to turn off the tap and conserve water. So if you want to keep up to date on what we're doing, especially when we can't all get out on the water together, like these folks are here from our staff, you can follow us on social media or on our blog, mbnep.org/blog. We have a lot of great scientific, fun articles there. And like I said, State of the Bay is where you can find out more about our State of the Bay. So that was the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. I can keep sharing my screen if anyone has questions about the slides, or I can stop.
Do we have any public comment on this agenda item at this time?
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9. And if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. There's no public comment at this time.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from other directors?
No, it was great.
Okay, I have one. I have one actually. The eelgrass is so important. Do we know what caused the decline 2007, 2008? That seems like it would be something good to know.
Yeah, that's a great question, and something we've put a lot of time and effort into, particularly with a partnership we developed with Cal Poly, which has been really fantastic. We've partnered with some great professors there, done a lot of different studies, everything from looking at eelgrass wasting disease, which we actually did with Augusta College, looking at changes in the sediment in the bay from the area closer to the mouth to the area to the back of the bay, looking at water quality and circulation with a physics professor, Ryan Walter, and upcoming in this next year, we have a project with another professor, Emily Bachman, working on looking at changes in ocean acidification in the bay. and how these things affect eelgrass. So the short answer is we don't have one simple reason why we experience this decline here. We think it's probably a combination of factors where there was a little change in water quality, sediment coming into the bay, making some areas of the bay not very conducive to the eelgrass growth, getting shallower, getting muckier, and it was hard for the eelgrass to reestablish. Changes in temperature, making it harder for eelgrass to survive over the season. And so what we're doing right now is focusing our restoration work in areas where we know eelgrass will do well, and we're focused on like qualities of those areas, how deep it is, what the water quality is like. And then we're continuing to work with partners at Cal Poly to keep ascertaining why we experience this change and to monitor going forward some different factors than we used to be monitoring to try to give us some better data going forward. If we see a good increase, what is some of these factors like, for example, eelgrass wasting disease, which we hadn't been looking at before, is there more or less of it? And can we tell a difference to maybe better predict in the future when we might have a decline like this?
It sounds like we're fortunate then to have the universities here to help out with that kind of study. That's pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's been a great partnership. It's a great way. One of the things that the estuary program does is we try to bring to the table our scientific expertise and our data and our ability to stay engaged in the bay in the long term, but we can't have all this expertise on staff. And so we collaborate with many, many partners to make projects happen. And Cal Poly has been a really fantastic partner on eelgrass.
Excellent, thank you. The whole NEP program has been such a volunteer labor of love. I mean, going back 20 years, 25 years, whenever that started, tremendous amount of energy from the local community got put into that. And I hope it all pays off. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chuck, this is Matthew. I had a question.
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, Lexi. This is Matthew Forkroy. Our board has heard public comment in the last, I guess, year or so about concerns with the new Morro Bay wastewater plant and its vicinity to Choro Creek. I guess I just wanted to ask if your organization has had any thoughts or if you're anticipating any negative changes to the health of Choro Creek because of that plant and where it's located.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been a major project, obviously, a lot of public comment and engagement. We did participate in the public process in site selection, and we provided comment indicating we would prefer the site not be inside our watershed because the current site of the old plant is actually outside of the Morro Bay watershed and drains directly to the ocean into Estero Bay, north of the rock, but not directly into the bay. But of course, there's a lot of factors in the city making a decision about the location. And so the water, from the watershed perspective, it's a new, impact that we didn't have before. So we've definitely provided comment on that and comment on stormwater management at the site and a number of other things. So we tried our best to provide that information and to participate in the process. And now I think moving forward, it's just a question of supporting good monitoring and good science to make sure we track any potential impacts. I think a well-operating plant can have very minimal impact. But that's sort of the question, is making sure that it's they have the resources they need to operate it in a way that is minimally impactful.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that because I know we've had quite a few. Well, we had a presentation and a few comments to our board about it. So I kind of wanted to close that loop while we had you here.
Okay, if there are no other comments, thank you, Lexi.
Chuck,
Yes.
I wanted to say something if I could. I was waiting.
I thought you should. Yeah.
Yes, as the board's representative to the estuary program. What I would like to just do here, obviously, and Lexi knows this, that eelgrass has been a big concern of mine. It's been one of the things that I've been very engaged in. And I think the increase in the acreage, although it's not significant, is a step in the right direction. But what I wanted to do is really thank Lexi and her staff for the work that they've been doing, especially engaging, as she mentioned, Cal Poly and the Cal Poly professors and interns to do the research work that otherwise could not be done. And I think there's been a significant amount of work done with the streams and the creeks that run into the bay as far as erosion control and reducing impacts on the salmon, et cetera. So I just wanted to pat Lexi and her staff on the back for a job well done.
I think that's very well said. Yeah. Yeah, it's a two-way street, though. The universities are getting opportunities for students and faculty to put knowledge into actual practical application. And so it's a good thing for both, actually, I think. And, you know, I do remember 2005-06 was a heavy rain year, lots of rain. And there may have been fewer of the habitat restoration projects online then that prevented sediment from hitting the bay. That may have been a contributing factor. I just remember that being a heavy rain year.
Yeah, we did a lot of looking at precipitation patterns for sure. We didn't clear cause-effect pattern, but I do think that had some contribution, change in sediment in the bay for sure.
Well, again, I wanted to give Lexi a pat on the back and her the rest of her staff. So if I could just close with that, Chuck.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
We will move on.
Stop sharing now, and I appreciate participating in your meeting tonight.
Well, thank you for being here. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 2B, public hearing to adopt ordinance number 2020-03 of the LOCSD, amending and restating chapter 4.04 of title 4 of the district code to modify hearing board membership. All of that has to do with our weed abatement program and how we appoint board members and not Board of Supervisors members to the hearing board. So Ron, anything else you want to add to that?
Next slide, please. Not really. I think you encapsulated that. We did introduce the ordinance at our last meeting. We talked about the hearing officer situation and the recommended action to change the reference to the Board of Supervisors to the Board of Directors. So next slide, please. Our recommendation is this, and I can answer any questions.
Do we have any board questions at this time? How about public comment? Do we have public comment on agenda item 2B?
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9. And if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. There's no public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board and I'll accept the motion for this.
Chuck, I'd like to move that the board adopt on second reading by title only ordinance 2020-03, amending and restating chapter 4.04 of title 4 of the district code.
I'll second.
Thank you, Christine. And could we have a vote, please?
Director Ohilsky.
Yes.
Vice President Womack. Vice President Womack.
Yeah.
Yes.
Director Fourcroy.
Yes.
Director Millage.
Yes.
President Cesenia.
Yes. Okay, that passes unanimously. And I think, was that Matthew and Christine that volunteered to be on the board this time?
Yes.
The hearing board? Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for stepping up. So now we will go on to public comment for items not on the agenda.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9, or if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. All right, Julie, you're able to speak.
Good evening, this is Julie Tacker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Chuck can. All right. I wanted to speak to you. I know Ron is going to talk to you about this a little later in the meeting, but I really wanted to take this opportunity to underscore my concern about the use of the Palisades well. The last month, the rate of pumping had increased to over 6 million gallons during that month. That's the driest months of the year that we're seeing this increase. I know it's due to the shutdown of the 10th Street well. I just want to vent a little bit because the district has worked so hard for so many years with basin plan implementation, millions of dollars spent on infrastructure and studies, and we were all in agreement that the use of the Palisades well is a big no-no. That is the well that draws in seawater intrusion. Now, I know some years ago we blocked off Zone E, which I fully support, and we needed to do that. But as I recall, when we did that, we were told that if we continued to pump that well for another 5 years, we might see seawater intrusion in Zone D. So I know we've backed off on the pumping. I get it, but I am very concerned that we're going backwards by using this well to pick up the slack for the loss of the 10th Street well at this time. I urge you to look for other options. Urge you to look for emergency funding, emergency permitting, whatever you need to do to either punch another well in the ground or fix the 10th Street well immediately. This is serious in that we are in the driest months of the year and we're pumping Palisades the hardest of any of the wells, and it's harder than we've been pumping it for several years, many years. And I just couldn't be more emphatic about it. And I want you to be creative. And like I said, look for emergency funding, look for emergency solutions if necessary. Palisades should be shut down and not accelerated in its use. And I really appreciate your time and your listening to my concern. Thank you very much.
There's no other public comment at this time.
Ron, can you, I forget to unmute half the time, can you give me an update on the status of the 3rd Street well? Are we going to be able to use that again at any time?
At this point, we doubt we'll reuse that one. As you recall, there's a couple of issues with it. Had chromium-6 detected at above the standard. When they re-looked at the chromium-6 standard, they raised it again, so it's technically okay from that point of view. The other problem we have is there's some bacteria entering the well, which would require us to either give it a heavier dose of chlorine going into the system, which then people along 3rd Street would notice, or we would have to build a contact chamber for hold time for the chlorine contact time, which may be difficult down there by the bay to construct something like that.
Okay, and then we've got the South Bay transmission, that Napomo line that is coming along, that's going to help those wells contribute more. 8th Street, the upper aquifer, waiting for the grant. I mean, we're doing what we can, I think, to try and preserve our options. It's just when 10th Street went down with some problems, we didn't have many options.
Right.
Not yet.
The 8th Street upper aquifer well will definitely help. To address Julie's concerns, which are legitimate, what we're doing on that is we're operating it in 4-hour intervals, then letting it rest for a period of time, and then pumping at another 4-hour interval. So we're doing soundings daily and we're doing chloride checks daily, both on that and 8th Street, because we're pushing 8th Street very hard right now as well. In terms of the repair on the 10th Street well, they're going to start work tomorrow. We've rocked the bottom. We've lost a little bit of the bottom part of that well. Our hope is to have it pump tested through next week and then hopefully operational by the week after. But I believe we're going to lose a little bit of capacity, but we will be able to back off from Palisades.
Okay, and that was part of your general manager's report, I'm sure. Thank you. So we'll move on at this point to administrative and committee reports, and we're going to ask for questions regarding any of the fire, sheriff. I would like to take a look at utilities department report, I guess, but at this point, fire and sheriff's department, do we have any questions about reports that have been, we've had, yeah. Anything from the board about those?
I don't have a question as much as a comment. Do you think we might invite them to come give presentations besides written? I'm missing them.
Oh, I know.
Obviously, fire has other things to do, but maybe they could participate via the webinar.
I'd hate to ask too much from them at this time, but it's definitely worth asking, I guess.
If I could address that, Chuck, when we
Sure.
moved to the Zoom webinar format, we made a decision that we would condense or abbreviate this part of our meetings. The chief would always be available, I believe, except when he has been out of town on fires. And we are hitting the peak right now of the fire season. So there may be opportunities where he wouldn't, or meetings he wouldn't be able to attend. The sheriff's just a little more tricky, because we had not, they haven't been able to participate fully in the past, but we could ask them. It's really been the format that has driven how we're handling, the reports.
Yeah, I think we'll all be
I'm sorry,
ready for,
I didn't hear that last bit about the format. What about the format? I mean, and I want to say I'd exempt the fire department. I mean, they have better things to do during fire season, until it's rainy, then they could come back.
What I was saying is that because of the format, we were trying to abbreviate the meetings. They're not difficult to run, but there are challenges. But we can ask if the sheriff's department would like to participate and the fire chief when he's available.
I think we're all ready
I'd like
for
that.
some kind of return to normal or whatever the new normal is going to be. It would just be nice to have some physical contact, some eye contact, definitely. As far as the utilities department report, I think your general manager's report, you're probably going to tell us anything that we need to know. So we'll just move on to item 4D.
Okay. I have a whole lot in my general manager report regarding utilities, but it is, to quickly touch on it, is you can see the impact of 10th Street well being down on both production and runtime hours on Palisades and the other wells. But we're holding pretty steady on consumption, which is good news. The other good news is that it's been a foggy summer, except for that about week or week and a half of heat. So production has been able to keep up with demand. With that, a couple of things on the general manager report I want to highlight is the Los Osos Community plan and how it's moving through the county process. I reported last time that there was a planning commission hearing on July 9th, and then it continued the hearings on July 13th. It appeared in that meeting that the commission was satisfied with the staff analysis and recommendations for the water resources in the community plan update. There will be one more, I think one more meeting, hearing at the Plan Commission level on October 8th, but they're going to mostly be talking about environmentally sensitive habitat areas and the habitat conservation plan. So there is a tentative date for the board to hear this on December 15th. We'll see if that holds or not. The BMC at the staff level is continuing to dialogue with the county to hopefully have some changes made to the water resources section, and we will keep you posted on that. I did want to, I got a call from our friends at Mission Country Disposal regarding the fall cleanup week. They're putting out information, but they asked if I'd take the opportunity during this meeting to tell people that it has been canceled. They've been very challenged with COVID-19 and being able to have enough drivers for their trucks to service all their service area, not only Los Osos and Mission Country, but all their South County areas as well. I did want to say we've kicked off our annual financial audit. The auditors were in our office last month for a couple of days, and they're going to be back in at the end of this month for 2 more days. I believe we'll have our audit results sooner than last year, so that would be good news to bring that to the board sooner than later than we did last year. I did provide an update to the late fee and lockout revenues. We thought we were seeing a decline last month, but we are concerned again that there's been an uptick in people not keeping up with their bills. And so again, we are reaching out, trying to make payment arrangements so people don't fall too far behind when we do start assessing fees and turning off water again. It's manageable for them. Just real quick update. Unless, Matthew, were you going to do something in your Parks and Rec about the Farrell pathway?
Yeah, I was going to definitely talk about that.
Okay, I won't mention that.
Okay.
Finally, I did want to mention we have made a employment offer for the utility systems manager. It's a former employee of the district, Margaret Faulkner. She has accepted, and we hope to see her towards the end of this month. With that, I can answer any questions.
Ron, this is Matthew. Yeah, I would like to talk about 10th Street a little bit more. So I think I'm up to speed as far as where we were at the utilities meeting a few weeks ago. So what's progressed since then? I think we were waiting on seeing camera results after the well had a chance to settle is where I think we had left off as far as I know.
Since that time, Filipponi and Thompson came back in, re-videoed, of course. We went in and started what they call bailing the bottom of the well. We were able to bail out, I forget exactly how many feet, but it's at about 390 feet now, where we were at about 450 feet. So we've lost the very bottom of the well. We believe the perforations were so corroded that when we did the rehab operation on it, it penetrated the casing. And so we're getting what they call sanding happening right now. We re-videoed it yesterday, where are we, 2 days ago. And we've done a rock bottom. Gravel has been dumped down to solidify the bottom and settle it out. We will be starting tomorrow to reassemble to do a pump test to see how many gallons per minute we will be able to sustain out of that. And then we'll proceed next week to put the well back together. We'll have to then put it through a bacteria process to heavily chlorinate it. And then hopefully in Halloween, we put it back into service. So we
Okay,
have
so we lost maybe 60 feet of the bottom of the well.
at least, yeah.
Do you know what the total open interval is on the perforations? So like the total zone that we're pulling from, like what's still open?
I don't know that information offhand, though we did see on the upper area of the perforations did open up from the rehab process. So that should help in terms of, excuse me, the amount of water that can flow through those perforations, but I can't get that information for you, Matthew.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Matthew. That's a very good question. What percentage? We know we lost some of the bottom of the well, but what percentage? If we can try and dial that in, it would be good. Ron, one thing that about your report that from the Planning Commission hearings, I missed the very first one. So I don't know what kind of discussion went on about water out here in Los Osos. I know that the second one, it was pretty cursory, not much said. I do remember the county staff reporting that, oh, the citizens of Los Osos are using less than their 50 gallons per person per day, which hasn't been true for quite a while. You know, judging from our own utilities report. I don't know where Golden State customers are at, but that certainly wasn't anything close to the reality now. And I just didn't get a good feel for the Planning Commission's grasp of the situation. So it'll be interesting as we move on to the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, it was the general consensus of the purveyors, mainly us and Golden State, that they didn't really understand the water resources part. You know, we submitted a letter about our concerns. State followed up with what I would say is even a better letter, you know, kind of pointing out the sections in the basin plan that weren't consistent with the water resource section. Between the first meeting and the second meeting, planning staff kind of changed their strategy and said they were going to rely on Title 19, the offset program, to allow new development to proceed. There is going to be a definite lag time, even if the Board of Supervisors approve the plan in December, which I don't think they will. There'll be a few years of lag time before anything could actually happen new development wise. We're moving into kind of interesting times.
Yes. Yes, in my mind, it's just it's a critical time for the community, and I just want to make sure information is exchanged and everybody has the same information. So with that, let's see, we're on to the Chamber of Commerce report. Any questions about that from anyone? Looks like we do not have a LOCAC report. Did we have someone go to the LOCAC meeting?
It got canceled.
LOCAC was canceled.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I did hear that. Parks and Recreation, Matthew, what do you have for us?
Well, yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about our last meeting. That was on the 18th. Essentially what we did is present the design as it stood from Wallace Group. And so essentially we have an alignment of where the path is going to go. And it basically follows the existing dirt path, except for the very end at 7th Street. The path actually cuts over slightly into the neighbor's property. So it's not entirely on our property at that point. So, and it also slopes downhill a little bit more than we can have for ADA access. So the alignment is more straightened out on that 7th Street side. And that means we're going to have to move our fence on just that portion over about, I think it's about 15 feet or so. And then we discussed, there's a couple of items that we're needing to clarify and get down. And that one is the surface of the pathway. And the other is what kind of exclusionary fencing alongside the pathway we want to have to keep people out of the snail habitat, essentially. So the committee coalesced around a split rail fence with 2 rails for that fence. And then we discussed about the surface, and really we had a couple of pricing, a couple of costs for concrete, for asphalt, and for DG with a binder or resin. And the concrete's the most expensive, and the committee really is looking at asphalt versus DG with resin, and with an emphasis on what is going to be the most durable, the biggest bang for the buck, that's going to last the longest with the least amount of maintenance. And so that's kind of where we ended that meeting. But the design of that pathway is continuing with Wallace, and it looks like Ron, maybe you can talk about the asphalt and the DG a little bit.
Yes, the emphasis or the takeaway from the Parks and Rec meeting was we wanted something that was durable, needed less maintenance, and would be cost effective, kind of the cost benefit. So since that meeting, working with Wallace, we had input from the city of Grover Beach that used decomposed granite with a binder. I don't think it was a resin, because once you add the resin, you're comparable to asphalt already then. But the maintenance cost of maintenance increased substantially with decomposed granite. So right now we will be recommending that we go with an asphalt surface. We have some cost per square foot types of numbers that Wallace has put together, which make it sound really very reasonable in terms of annual maintenance on an asphalt pathway. And I'm hoping to have the report by the week of the 14th for our staff review, and then schedule a Parks and Rec meeting for the week of the 21st for their input, and then have something to this board for our October meeting.
Okay, good. That could be a big meeting, because we have a well, I think, coming to us. Maybe the Program C location in October, hopefully.
Thank you for reminding me on that, Chuck. I talked with our consultant on that. We won't be receiving the environmental constraints analysis until September 15th. So it'll be November where we see the well.
Okay, but we're moving ahead. Now, one thing about the pathway that I'm not sure I understood. Was it currently on a neighbor's property? Is it all going to be on our property? There's no right-of-way easements or anything needed for this?
Right now, it does go onto private property, our neighbor's property. We decided that it would be cleaner and simpler to move our fence over, so it's all on our property. Plus, then, as Matthew noted, it's easier for us to comply with the ADA standards by eliminating a slope at that side of the property.
Yeah, it sounds like all the right things. That's just what I was wondering. I wanted to make sure that the ADA compliant path wasn't on the neighbor's side of the line, kind of thing. Because, just right-of-way easements are just extra complications if you don't need them.
Right.
Yeah, and more time. So, yeah, so the proposed pathway is all on our property.
Good. Okay.
And I wanted to throw out, from our meeting, we had some estimated costs. And those costs were for demolition, grading, aggregate base was $10,000, which we have to do no matter what surface. And then an asphalt pathway was another $15,000. And a split rail fence, the estimated cost was $2,900. So that's the realm of costs that I anticipate, coming back with in the next little bit here.
Excellent. That sounds very reasonable, and I agree with the choice on the split rail fence, or the rail fencing. Not that I was involved, but yeah, that just seems to make sense. You kind of want something open feeling and not too hard a barrier. So Matthew, you led the Utilities Advisory Committee meeting last week or a couple weeks ago since I was late joining. We've talked about utilities a lot. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, a lot of that meeting was about the 10th Street well. So, you know, Ron just gave us that update.
Yes.
And then, you know, really more about the community plan update, which I think we've hashed over pretty good so far. So I think we're good to go.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, just wanted to make sure. On to item I, the Finance Advisory Committee meeting report. Do we have one of those?
Yes. Well, this is Marshall. We met on Monday. So the two items that are on your consent agenda, the warrants and the financial reports, the committee recommended unanimously that you approve those. And then we had a discussion about the financial investment policy, and they were totally supportive of staff's recommendation and the direction that staff's going in that regard. It was pretty short and sweet, to the point meeting. I don't know, Christine, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, yes. So I think we were, I just want to relay a thought that I think it would be okay to put some of the money that we have in the bank account for water back into LACE. Percentage-wise, I think.
You're talking about the investment policy right now, yes. I just
Oh,
wanted to
yeah, I think that's what we were discussing.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to clarify that that was the discussion item about making sure that the investment policy was secure, but we were also able to access the money and have some interest income. So I'll leave that then to talk. You can talk about, Chris, what you think would be the best path forward.
Oh, and I did want to also note that I believe what we have is not money market, it's asset backed. It's backed by assets of 110% of, you know, what we have at the bank, and then it's backstopped by the state of California. So it is safe, that we're in a good spot, but we can hold our money in more than one place. And so that's what I thought we were also discussing, maybe putting some more back into LACE. Did I cover it?
Yep, you did a good job.
Okay, thanks.
Good, I like that. I'm not comfortable with too many eggs in one basket, definitely. So thank you for furthering that discussion. Let's see, Jay, Director's announcements of district and community interest, reports on attendance at public meetings, training programs, conferences, and seminars. Anything exciting going on out there anybody wants to report on?
Yeah, I've got two, Chuck. This is Marshall. The basin management, or pardon me, I was going to start with the estuary program. We had our quarterly meeting, the executive committee talked about basically what Lexi did in her annual update. And then we're in our review process from the NEP right now, and we're getting, it looks like we're getting really, really good reviews from the NEP on that. So Lexi's been doing an awesome job. So we had that meeting. And then, like I said, Lexi covered pretty much everything. The eelgrass is the big item that we talk about continually, just why did this happen, what we can do to mitigate it, and how, even though we don't have interns from Cal Poly right now going out physically in the bay to monitor this stuff, we have the flyovers that we're working with. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about the estuary program. I thought Lexi did a good overview on that, though. Okay, then I'll move on to the Basin Management Committee. We met, I think that one thing that was already talked about, and Ron talked about it, was the role, and you brought it up, Chuck, was the role of the Basin Management Committee relative to the community plan update and the HCP plan. basically my committee, I'm the chair of that. We charged our staffs with sitting down, working together to come up with a plan for active monitoring that would provide more data points and more dependable data. So Ron, you talked a little bit about that, but our staff's going to be working, or pardon me, the Golden State and the CSD staffs will be working with county staff to try to come up with a resolution that's acceptable to all parties. As Ron mentioned, they did kind of flip between the first Planning Commission meeting and the second Planning Commission meeting by addressing the concerns of the purveyors by basically just going to Title 19. So we directed staff to continue their discussions with county staff. I don't know, Ron, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you talked about it a little bit already, and then I'll go on to my other items.
Just quickly, we are having a meeting tomorrow morning of the BMC staff, and we'll be working hard to define a little bit more on the implementation plan, which is around all the projects, and formulating a strategy for an AB 1600 fee study. That's a development impact fee.
Yeah, no, those were the next two items on my agenda or my report. I was just talking about the interaction with county staff on that item, but
Marshall
beat me to the punch on those. So yeah, so the other things that we talked about was just the initial data that we have for the spring 2020 lower aquifer groundwater monitoring results, which really don't show a significant change. And then the other two things we talked about was the implementation plan and the budget authorization, about how to prepare an implementation plan and to utilize the budget to prepare that. And what we came up with was basically a plan where we would have, where we would have staff look at certain trigger points, and then to come up with a more coherent plan rather than lumping everything together, but just to do it more in a process, I guess is a good way to put it, but to make sure that everything's covered, but not that we're covering things that aren't necessary once the initial analysis is done. And then the other thing was the AB 1600 funding study, and that was just something we directed staff to get together and talk about, and Ron said he has a meeting tomorrow morning to discuss that. So those were the four things that we talked about, and then we just had an update on the basin plan implementation, and there's really no significant changes other than the program Seawell trying to move forward. So now, Ron, if you have anything to add, you can jump on.
Marshall, you did a great job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So those are the two meetings that I attended, Chuck.
Great, Marshall. I appreciate that. The basin management issues they're just at the forefront of community issues right now, and I appreciate a very thorough report like that. One thing I would like to add, CAPSLO, board I sit on, Community Action Partnership. It's just a wide umbrella of services, everything from Head Start, First 5 programs to weatherization for low-income people, military veterans assistance, health clinics for college kids. $70 to $80 million a year passes through the San Luis Obispo Community Action Partnership. We actually have fingers into Central Valley counties, down to San Diego counties. Some of those programs are run through the CAPSLO program because it is so efficient. Well, Biz Steinberg, our executive director, just won a congressional medal of some sort presented by Salud Carbajal yesterday. Pretty high honor. That's a wonderful organization. Any chance you get to support them, I suggest that we do. And with that, if there's no other activities that people want to report on, we'll move on to response to previously asked questions.
We have no questions that need to be answered at this time.
That's because we're good at trying to answer them as they come up, I think. Thank you. Okay, public comment for items on the administrative and committee reports and the consent agenda. Now, anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda for separate consideration?
I don't.
I don't. I guess you know what. Let me ask one quick question about the personnel policy. I saw a lot of. It looked like a couple of changes highlighted in the staff report, but then the track changes version seemed like there might have been a lot of discussion about things that went on. The only thing that I saw that came through had to do with employees when they accept employment and then leave the district property. There was a phrase about we may have them sign an acceptance or an acknowledgement that they're receiving district property, and then they, of course, return that when they leave. And I wondered, when do we require that and when do we not? Because it says may and not shall. And I should probably find the exact section of that. I think it was 20. Let's see. I just wondered if, because, you know, I don't want to be trying to track every pencil or everything, but I just wondered, when do we have someone acknowledge that they've received district property for use with their employment and that we want it back?
My understanding is in our orientation process, and if there's any district property issue, it is understood that they return it at the end, and we don't process their exit papers, which usually entail money, until we've received everything that they have been issued. I'm not familiar with that, to tell you the truth, but that's standard procedure.
There it is, Chapter 2, 2050-3. It was just kind of a reference that we may ask you to sign an acknowledgement that you've received district property. And I wondered when, or why don't we just make that a mandatory thing, or is there some reason why we have a may in there?
I don't believe there's any reason, and we could easily change that to a shall.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
What kind of district property are we talking about? Like a phone or?
Keys, phone, that kind of thing, I would imagine. Something
Perhaps a
substantial, you know, credit card, yeah, all that kind of thing. I guess I would just feel better if we had a definitive, if you're going to accept anything of value that is the district's, we want it for sure acknowledged. Like I say, I'm not looking at pencils or anything like that.
You know, this is
So I'm
Marshall.
guessing-
But this is Marshall. I hate to say this, but I think you're going to have to pull the item because this is not a question. This is a substantive discussion.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself. Okay. All right, we'll pull that item and then we'll move on to public comment for administrative committee reports and the consent agenda.
If you'd like to make a comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9. And if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. All right, Julie, you're able to speak. It still has you muted.
There, how's that?
Much better.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I didn't know I did that. Okay, Julie Jacker, and in listening to your reports, I noticed that the Basin Management Committee, you know, it has a monthly update on the use of the treated wastewater. And as of now, or the last meeting, some 50 acre-feet this year has been used by sea pines. And the reason I want to mention that is because sea pines has no seawater mitigation factor. And if it does, it's very small. The best that we've got for the reuse of treated wastewater is Broderson. And the reason that we go to Broderson is because it builds a hydraulic head that pushes back seawater intrusion right down by Palisades Well. So back to my point, with 10th Street in trouble, and I didn't know it was as old as I am until tonight. I'm concerned that you're going to throw good money after bad when we have an emergency situation. And I would like you to explore an intertie, the intertie with Golden State, and using water pumped from one of their wells away from the seawater wedge. I know that we have policies in place for that, and that discussion should be going on. And another tentacle that Ron can look for, or get Wallace Group to look for, is emergency permitting of the program Seawell, and you can find emergency funding. I really cannot emphasize enough how important this is to the basin. And as much as I know everyone that's working on this is really smart, I just can't have had 20 years following this district, following this basin, and in good conscience not raise this red flag to say, you know, that's what we've been pointing to all along as the finger that of seawater intrusion that comes in and spoils the rest of the basin. So I hope your board asks Ron to explore some of these ideas that I put forward for you tonight, because I really think that they're viable and they make some sense. So maybe there's a special meeting and we move this program Seawell along. With an emergency permit, you can back into a real permit. We were already in the progress, but now we really need that well. So thank you for your time and your attention.
There's no other public comment at this time.
Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to the board. I get Ron. I don't have a problem with the discussion with Golden State, but we have the intertie. That's why we have the intertie. If there's any way that we can help the basin in a short-term need by examining those options, I just think that that's part of what we put the intertie in for. In terms of sea pines, isn't offsetting of pumping, I mean, they're watering their grass otherwise with something besides the recycled water. So I thought that was the best use of recycled water, was to offset pumping. Broderson, it's 30 years before we see much of an effect. I don't know. We're stepping through this, but I think sea pines is definitely always been part of the plan. And if there is a chance to talk with Golden State about intertie use, there's no harm in starting that discussion.
I had a discussion with them today, so we're ahead of the game.
Thank you. Yeah, because that's a very complicated subject, and I imagine that'll take a while.
We do. But if
we can, go ahead.
Sorry, we do have an agreement. The interesting thing is the intertie was upgraded in 2016, and it's never been operated. So when I talked to Golden State today, we agreed that we need to have a wet test actually operate that system to see how it responds. Because it's not just a simple turn the valve. Our pressure is higher than their pressure on that side in that area. So we have to decrease the pressure in our system for that water to flow. And the other way around is they can only pull it in if we need to push water their direction. They can only pull it into their Los Olivos storage tank because of the pressure differentiations and the way it's plumbed on that side.
Nothing is easy. And I assume that with the intertie connections that we had, is there some sort of a process spelled out for when we would look at activating that sort of thing?
We do have an agreement, and it's basically either agency can request, the other agency only needs to do it if they feel they have the water to provide. And then there's a costing component in the agreement. So it is spelled out in general terms. But again, in the past, we have, through the old intertie, my understanding is we have had to help Golden State out because of some issues they were having two or three different times.
Okay. Well, regardless, the testing should occur. That needs to happen. We need to make sure the system is operable.
And it plays into the program C well, because wherever we locate, or at least the prime areas that we are looking at, will be in the Golden State service area, and we'll have to have some sort of a wheeling agreement in a way to make that water move through our system.
So I guess I have a
Right.
question. How long before 10th Street's back up and going?
We're hoping in about a week and a half. And again,
Okay.
ready to move on the program A, 8th Street Up Rockford well. I'm thinking if we can't get something going soon, we just do that project because we have the money.
I've been turning that over in my own mind for a year.
Right.
You know, how long do we wait for something that improves the basin in exchange for grant funding? But we're close. We're what, September? We're 3 months away, maybe, from
Yes.
knowing for sure.
Well, once we have the agreement, or we know we are going to have the agreement executed, we can go ahead, move forward and start incurring expenses that are reimbursable. So.
Okay, excellent. You're on top of that then. Good. So with that, that's the end of public comment. We'll accept a motion on the reports and the consent agenda.
Okay, Chuck, I will make a motion to receive and file the administrative committee reports and approve the consent agenda except for item
E.
6E.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
This is Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Ohilsky,
Yes.
Director Fourcroy,
Yes.
Director Millage,
Yes.
Vice President Womack,
Yes.
President Sisenia.
Yes. Okay, and with that, I guess we go to the hold item from the consent calendar. And
So I just had one more comment is
yes.
maybe if we gave somebody something with value, say a phone, but then as they were leaving, it didn't really have value, maybe that would be a reason to not need it back if you're going to upgrade anyway. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I guess I just wasn't sure, you know, a May. I thought, well, if it's May, then we kind of have to have a little bit further definition somewhere about when we do and when we don't. And if we have that in each department, that sort of a policy, then I'm okay. It's on page 15 of the personnel policy issue, 2050, let's see, item, it's 3, property return agreement.
Mr. President.
And it just reads, yes.
If I could just interject, I went back to the ledge draft, you know, the track change draft, and it appeared Laura and I relied heavily on the CSDA personnel policy template, and this appears to
Okay.
come out of their template. With that said, I think we just changed that to shall, and that would solve, because that's what we do anyway.
Yeah, right. It seems to me that's a standard acknowledgement of employment. If you furnish me the things that I need to do, the tools I need to do my job, I return them when I'm no longer employed here. So I would be in favor of that.
That makes sense to me.
Any objections to making that change?
No. I mean, I don't object.
Okay. Good. Okay. Then with that little change, I guess we can move on and approve this item.
Any public comment, if you don't mind? This is Jeff.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
If you'd like to make a public comment on agenda item 6E, please raise your hand if you're on your computer or press *9 if you're on your phone. There's no public comment at this time.
Okay, so with that, I will entertain a motion to approve this resolution with that change.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution amending and updating the personnel policy with the word shall included.
Thank you.
I'll second Matthew's motion. This is Chris.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Fourcroy,
Yes.
Vice President Womack,
Yes.
Director Millage,
Yes.
Director Ohilsky,
Yes.
President Sisenia.
Yes. Okay, let's see, future agenda items. Do we have anything that we need to pay attention to that we're not? Okay, we can remember at any time, talk to the general manager, talk to me, we can add things along the way. Any closing board comments? Okay, with that, we're going to adjourn to a closed session we need the public comment on the closed session first. Let's do that.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please press *9. If you're on your computer, please raise your hand. There's no public comment at this time.
Guess I should have announced the public comment would deal with public employment, the general manager's review, but okay, with that, we will adjourn to closed session. And are we reporting back tonight? Do we report formally at our next meeting? How do we do this?
Mr. President, this is Jeff. My suggestion would be that we would report out at the next meeting. If there is anything other than report out of no action, we will post that on the website ahead of time.
I guess that's the key, is that tonight is not an action. This is not an action night. We're going to talk about process for the review. So the review is not occurring tonight, it's process. So there won't be any decisions announced about any review results or anything like that. So with that, I guess we will adjourn to closed session. And thanks everyone for tuning in.